Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and today is the 21st of August, so last day of Leo season here. I am using a little bit of a filter to kind of redden things up and give me a little bit more. Good morning. I'm kind of using a little bit of a filter today just because the natural one, it was just weird. I was like, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I feel like it was showing things. I'm like, that's I don't know. My face just didn't look like it actually looked. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just do this morning. So this morning is it's gorgeous here. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's good morning, Sam. It's about what's the temp we have right now? It's probably okay in UK terms. It's probably about 9 degrees out. So it's about 50. So it's really, really beautiful here right now. And this is, like I said, this is the weather where I feel like doing a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, last night was, it's certainly quieter than the nights that I've had in the last few days where I've talked about some of the things. But I did get a very curious Azrael message this morning. And it's about, it relates to a topic that I don't usually talk about. Not on here. A lot of times this is just one of those things that it's just, I might mention certain things about this occasionally, but I don't usually talk about it. So I feel like this is like a message that I have to give kind of first. And then, after that, I'm going to get into the topic today, which seems to be having to do with, feelings of aloneness and feelings of being overwhelmed, and the difference between aloneness and loneliness seems to be the main theme that I'm looking at here. But, okay, so let me just give you a little backdrop on what it is that I'm going to talk about. Now, last year, probably about this time, I started, maybe it would have been like a week from now. I had a lot of stuff going on at this time last year. I was leading the Rock Box Annex. I was working there I was doing readings, I was doing Reiki therapy, I was doing astrology, all kinds of stuff. And the owner decided that she wanted to close the annex down. She was only doing things in their main store, which was very, very tiny. And even that store is closing now too. I don't feel like, she was a nice person and everything, but I just don't think, I think she had too many irons in the fire in different places. And she wasn't, she was never, I don't feel like she was ever really there at the store very much. And so I always feel like an owner has to kind of be there and like personally there and invested. Otherwise, to kind of always leave it to somebody else, especially when you're talking about a small business. And even though the person she had left it to was doing a great job, it was just like, I don't know, it just wasn't working out quite right. So in any case, and I had gotten a message 2 months earlier because I had been thinking about, there had been some other things, and I was thinking like, you know what, maybe I'm going to end my time here at the end of August. But literally I got a message like, don't say anything, just wait because you're going to get, it was like, right, kind of like a day like now, right between Leo and Virgo. I think it was the 23rd last year. It was like, you're going to get a message and from a woman. And they said, and when you get that message, then the path will be clear. And literally on that day, I got a message from the owner who had said to me, oh yeah, by the way, we're closing the store. And I was like, okay, there's the message. But I had another message around that time. It was June last year, where I had a message about somebody. It was like my guides were trying to point some person out to me. And they were describing this person to me. Now, I'm not going to give too much of a description because I don't want to give away who this person is. But, I do mention this person's live stream and stuff occasionally on here. And when they started giving me this description of this person, I was like, they're like, you've seen this person before. I'm like, does this person know me? Have we met? They're like, no, but you've seen this person before. And I'm like, okay. Like, I literally had no idea. And then when I asked for a first initial, I'm like, oh, just give me a first initial, like, throw me a bone here. Give me a first initial of this person. The letter I had gotten was, I was just like, I don't know anybody with this name. Like, it was like, it wasn't like a letter. It wasn't like your typical like J or M or S. It was just like, I was like, it was like, I thought, okay, I don't even know if I want to say what it is because again, people might figure out who I'm talking about. But, in any case, I just was like, okay, I have no idea who you're talking about. So I just wrote it off as like, I'm probably thinking too deeply about this. I just need to walk away from it. But then probably right around this time, because again, they told me this was, a lot of things seem to happen for me between Leo and Virgo, so we'll see what the next week looks like. But I literally at that time, I was watching YouTube, and there's certain channels that I watch, and there's a genre of YouTube video that is like reaction videos and analysis videos and things like that, musical stuff. And sometimes, like, especially if it's an artist that I really like, and I always think like, okay, what would the younger generations think about this particular artist? I get, my attention can get sucked in by some of those because I'm always interested to see. And of course I have friends who will be like, yeah, those younger people, they've probably heard of, these bands, and they're like, I've never heard of the Beatles. Yeah, sure you didn't. I mean, that's the way they feel about it. That may or may not be true, to be honest. But in any case, it's sort of in those, it's not really, this person doesn't do reactions, but they do analyses. And I was like, and so it's not the type of channel, it's like something occasionally I might think like, oh, okay, well that's kind of interesting. But it wasn't something that I would necessarily watch regularly if, I mean, like I said, I do have a strong interest in music, especially music of that particular generation. Not really any music. I couldn't tell you anything about 21st century music. I don't even know any, because I just don't, it doesn't resonate with me at all. Like, very, very occasionally does anything resonate with me. So, but then, now this was a channel I had seen before, and I remember seeing it and seeing the guy on this channel thinking, ooh, but I did, and I had watched one or two videos, but then I kind of moved away from watching those for a while, so I didn't pay any attention. So then at the end of August, one of these videos popped up again, and all of a sudden, like, everything clicked. Like, everything that the guides told me, including this person's name, which I was like, wait, what is this person's name? And then when I saw it, I was like, is this who you're, and they're like, yep, that's exactly who we're talking about. And I'm like, okay. So this guy's like been pointed out to me, but I'm like, and I've been watching his videos for the last year, participating in his live streams. I'm actually on his Patreon, and I do message him quite frequently, because that's what my guides have said. They're like, because sometimes this guy's like really, really busy, and I'm like, look, I don't want to be bothering him with stupid messages and things. And they're like, no, bother him with stupid messages. I'm like, okay. And again, like, I'll talk about certain things, and I always tend to look at things, anybody who watches this channel regularly knows I get very deeply into things. And he might I might be like, oh, well, this was really all I was thinking about it. Like, he doesn't necessarily, very nice. He's very nice. And, to say that I know him would probably, I don't know. I know what he presents to himself, and I don't think he's a very authentic person. Like, I don't think he's BSing anybody. By the same token, when I listen to him, I'm like, I don't feel, there's a lot of things that he says, and I'm like, you're just very kind of politely pushing off certain questions, especially if it gets very personal, which, frankly, is his right. I mean, I don't think people have a right to know things about you, when you're doing a public channel of some kind. I mean, you'll talk about what you want to talk about, and if his focus is music, that's really what he wants to talk about. He doesn't want to talk, he'll say things. If people ask him questions about himself, he'll answer them, but he's not, like, if people start getting into, like, oh, were you in a relationship, this and that. I mean, he says he hasn't been in a relationship in 4 years, but, and he's very, very busy. When I was in the UK last time, I did reach out to him because where I was staying was not terribly far from where he lived, but he was like, I did not expect a yes answer, because he's like, I'm so busy right now. And I know that's always the answer. And I don't doubt that he is. But it was, but let's just say that was the answer I expected. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I mean, wasn't like annoyed that he, said, he couldn't or whatever, because it's like, I know legitimately he's busy. He does talk about that a lot. So, all right, so why am I even bringing this up? Because like I said, I messaged, I messaged back him last night, and then I got a reply. But, okay, I got a message from Azrael this morning. And Azrael, for whatever reason, seems to be kind of trying to get some kind of message through to him. So I feel like whatever reason they're pointing him out to me, I don't know. Like, the kind of work that I'm doing, I don't know if on some level he's not saying the same kind of thing that I do, but there's something that they want him to do. And apparently they've been trying to get a message through, and basically I got a very frustrated Azrael going like, I just can't get through to this guy. He's not hearing what I'm saying. I mean, even when I put it, he's not hearing what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what to do about that, because I don't feel like I can write and say that to him. He'll be like, oh God, she's completely lost her mind. And he, you know, I don't know. So the message I had gotten this morning was Lapi al progra tiafo katni doa, which is basically, the implication there is that he had, like, I don't know if this guy had some kind of a dream, but whatever it was kind of, might have been a dream that either was startling or frightening or jarring, something about, and connected to the supermoon in some way. So that's why I feel like I got this message like right now. Like, I feel like everybody's been getting messages at this supermoon. And I got this message, and so whatever it is, it was something, and he said something about his name. So, good morning, Suda. And I was just, you know, so I don't know. It was, I don't know exactly what it is, but apparently there was some kind of, apparently I'm guessing that he probably had some kind of a dream or something, and Azrael's like, look, he needs to know that that's me. And that that he needs to pay attention because I'm trying to tell him something. And so, now why would I even bring it up on this live stream? Well, because, and I have no independent verification of whether this is true, and I have a feeling if I asked, I wouldn't get a real answer. I get the feeling he does actually watch this live stream. I think he at least has a curiosity about the stuff that I do. Again, I don't know particularly why he would be interested in the content on this live stream, but so I'm just going to tell him, if you're watching and you had that, you know, and by the way, feel free to message me about it if you want to, you know, if we want to go into that, figure that out. But you just wanted to say, you know, will you please tell him that I'm the one trying to get through to him here? And I know, I realize I'm being kind of very vague here, but I just feel like the reason I don't want to say this person's name is because they're, you know, I wouldn't say that they're like not a major celebrity or anything like that, but they are fairly well known. So I'm like, I just don't want that. So his Hierophant vibes. Hierophant vibes. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, you know, maybe. I mean, it's, yeah, like there's something I'm teaching or showing or something, but literally this person is not somebody, I mean, he does have an interest in, like, he's interested in like the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. Like he thinks like, he's like, I'm interested in knowing about, you know, the bigger mysteries of things. But he's also somebody who has like a very kind of logical, scientific mind. He's all Aries sun, Aries moon, like he's all Aries. And he's all very much about, you know, well, what does science say? Like, you know, and that's not untypical of anybody. So like I'm saying, sometimes I feel like if I talk to him like this, he's probably thinking like, well, okay, like that's your thing, but that's just weird. Like he doesn't say that. He's always very, very nice to everybody. He's never been, he's just not, you know, even when people, I think, ask him questions where if it was me, I would be like, you know, he's always very, very nice about it. So he's not somebody who is, like, he's not a dick about anything, really. So I don't know. But he might privately just be thinking, like, okay, like, this person's, like, you know, off there, whatever. But anyway, I don't know. So, but Azrael seems to say that, you know, no, there's something, and he needs to understand that it's not, because I have a feeling like if anything like that happened, or even if like he heard a voice or something like I have had, he would probably be like, oh, I'd probably just imagine that, or oh, that was just some weird dream because I ate something weird. Like I have a feeling like that's the way he would interpret it. And Hasriel's like, he's got to know that that's not the case. So anyway, so if you're watching, that message was for you. Anyway, so moving on. The topic for today, and Suda joined a little late today, so yeah, just so you know, it's this is a message I had gotten for somebody else whose live streams and stuff I watch, and videos I watch pretty regularly, who was pointed out to me by my guides last year, and they were just like, you know, and again, I exactly the 100% reason why, I don't know. This doesn't seem like a type of person who's open to like a relationship. He's not, and it doesn't seem like this is anything he would be interested in. So I'm like, okay, this is literally an exercise in trust that I'm like, okay. I mean, you know, like I said, I do genuinely like him. I mean, I'm not like, it's not like I don't, but it's just like, it's a weird kind of thing. He probably wonders, like, why are you watching my channel? Like, you know, he probably thinks that way. So, any case, that's that. So, the topic I was going to talk about today, what came up, was, okay, it's this particular card that popped up today, and that is the card of Aloneness, okay? Now, what's interesting about this card is this is like a hermit card, okay? And that's funny because we're about to enter Virgo, and hermit is the card of Virgo. But you have the old man, and he's walking in this space that's kind of dark, but there's a light, but the light is coming from inside of himself, okay? So, and it's interesting because I also pulled the essential oil card, reassuring oil. I'm wondering what kind of an oil blend that is, but in any case, that's the oil. And the trigger statement is my life is a mess. The true statement is I find stillness within, which I think kind of coordinates with that, because when someone's a light unto themselves, they have stillness within. It says your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Go within to find peace there, and your life will reflect that. Right, so as it is, you know, we perceive it as inside and outside. I have always said that I don't see it that way. I don't think it's an inside-outside thing. I think it's more of a, you know, it's more of a, it's kind of, one flows into the other, you know, one's an extension of the other. But our perception, we perceive that which is in my head, my thoughts, whatever, as opposed to that which is in the external world. But again, if we go with the idea that separation is an illusion, then really there really is technically no such thing as aloneness. We're never really technically alone. That said, certainly our perceptions, we perceive ourselves as being alone. And the question is, what's the difference between being alone and being lonely? You'll hear people a lot of the time, and I think this is especially a thing with women. I don't see this as much with men. Because if a man decides he wants to be alone, a lot of times it's just, he's just the, if you go back to your kind of Victorian era, you know, novels and stuff like, oh, he's the eligible bachelor, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Or people might assume that they're gay, or people might assume, you know, people might assume all kinds of things. But nonetheless, the idea that a man would live his life on his own, sometimes they would say like somebody would join the military, or somebody who would just decide they want to travel. Like they're just kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's just the way he is. He's not ready to settle down. You know, maybe just, you know, wants to, and then of course people might say to that person, and again, we're talking heterosexual type relationships here, and I realize that there may be other, you know, there's other, you know, relationship pairings that exist, and but this is just kind of the more of the gender stereotype stuff. But if a woman is that way, if a woman is alone, then it becomes like, oh, well, she really needs a husband. You know, she must feel so sad. She must feel so lonely. And you know how many times my mother does this all the time. She never says it to me. Always says it to my sister. And I'm like, I'm not, you know, I may be alone, but I'm not lonely. Lonely means that I just feel that I'm isolated, that I have nobody. Now, we all go through feelings of isolation. And sometimes, the thing is with loneliness is not a condition that has to do with the other person in your life, okay? It doesn't, you could be married and have a family and still be lonely, okay? You could be in a room full of people. It's like wallflower syndrome. You could walk into a room full of people and be ignored by everybody and still feel lonely. You know what I mean? Loneliness doesn't have anything to do with the number of people around you. Loneliness has to do with whether you perceive yourself to be a stranger or an outsider in a particular situation a lot of the time, or whether or not you feel like you're heard or you're being able to communicate. If you're not able to do that, then, you know, you have that feeling of loneliness. You have that feeling of isolation, of I'm not understood. I don't have anyone to talk to. And that's where the feeling of loneliness comes from. Aloneness is a different thing, because when you're alone, as this card implies, the idea is that you are a light unto yourself. And that means that you are able to, it's kind of what I've talked about the last week, and being able to kind of stand firm in your own identity, whatever it is. Now, standing firm doesn't mean being rigid and saying, you know, F everybody, I'm not willing to change or listen to anybody else. I don't mean being rigid, but just the idea that you can, you have You are comfortable with who you are. So when people challenge who you are, or people don't understand who you are, it's like, okay, they just don't understand who I am. And yet you're still solid in yourself, and you're still, as you live your own authentic truth, it gives off a kind of a light. And the people who are going to be drawn to that light, the other people who are, there's always going to be somebody who is drawn to the type of energy that you have. And the more solid you are in that, the better, the more you're going to draw, and the more you're going to also draw the kinds of experiences that you want. People I find who tend to draw very negative experiences with people, or kind of having very negative, like people who are stalkerish, or people who are abusive, or people who are, I mean, sometimes these people are people we maybe have karma with that we need to sort out. Sometimes it's just, it could be a reflection of a lot of things, but it's like a vulnerability that's almost combined with that sense of, it's like a chain event. It's like you're isolated, and then you feel insecure, and there's a lack of security in who you are. And that's not something that a person should be blamed for. It's not like, oh, well, if you weren't this way, this wouldn't happen to you. That's not the way it is. It's just that it could be that energetically that's a sign that person needs to protect their energy, to shore up, and to, and as I find people, and that's why I think I deal a lot, like with my coaching with people in transition, because that's really the critical point where you feel vulnerable, where you feel like, either you feel like you're very alone, or you feel like you are vulnerable to attack of some kind. Like, I'm in this new space, I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel, and that's where we have all these feelings, and that's where all these past feelings may come up too. Like if we had feelings like that from childhood, or, times when we felt ignored by our parents or our family, or whatever it was. If we feel that, then that's like the memory, because we think, our minds think causally, cause and effect. Oh, this situation's happening, it feels like this past situation, it must be the same situation. And, because if A, then B, and it's not necessarily true. In fact, frequently, it's not true. It's not necessarily the same situation, because if you look at a childhood experience and then you're coming at something as you get older, you're coming at it from a different perspective, because now you have a different, you're not a 5-year-old, like you have life experience. You're not coming at it the same way. You've learned some things in between. So when you're confronted with a situation again, you say, okay, now this is what I know. You don't necessarily want to revert back to the 5-year-old in that case, who doesn't understand what's going on. So aloneness is really more about being solid in yourself. And I feel like, and I talk about this a lot on my other channel, about the way that in which a feminine person who is very solid in themselves and says, relationships would be nice, but if I don't have one, I'm also perfectly happy being by myself. That's almost perceived as threatening in some way. Like, well, you can't be that way. You have to have, some other person to be looking after you all the time. I'm like, or maybe I need to be looking after somebody. I don't know. I don't quite understand that, but I know that a lot of people just find it. It's like I've said, I think I've talked about this in the past. Like if I decide I'm going to go out, or I'm somewhere doing some kind of business, and I'm like, well, I'm going to stop for lunch somewhere. And if I go in, and then they kind of say, oh, well, it's just you, like that kind of a thing. And again, I don't necessarily see that happening with men when I see them come into certain places that I would frequent. But when I would, but again, once people got used to it, the fact that I would come in, then nobody asked those kinds of questions in most places. But I had seen that there's always this idea that you need some kind of human companionship all the time. And I'm like, not necessarily, because sometimes we, especially if you're an introvert, okay, if somebody's introverted, then they want to spend more time by themselves. They want to, they prefer to, they're kind of more in that internal space than vocalizing in that external space. Everybody has a different comfort zone with that. And if you look at now again, as imperfect as it is, if you look at the Myers-Briggs type indicator in terms of personalities and such, which is based on Jung's ideas of introvert, extrovert, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving, like all those kinds of characteristics. What Jung has said is that we generally start with one set of those characteristics when we're younger, and then as we get older, we may actually completely flip types. So somebody who was an introvert when they're young might be an extrovert when they're older. What I found when I retook those tests, good morning. I would do this, when I remember when I took the Myers-Briggs years ago, I was in, that's when I was working as a librarian, one of my first library jobs. I was INTJ, okay? Introverted, intuitive, thinking, judging, which is actually a very good characteristic for a librarian because of the way in which you're classifying things and putting things into categories and labeling like that, or the way in which you need to do that to approach organizing information or, sorting through information or things like that. That's usually, INTJ is usually a very common librarian type. But then I took the test again when I got older, and I can't remember. I feel like the thinking, judging piece hasn't totally changed. It was like the judging, I feel like, was more on line with perceiving, more on line with the P. And my I and my E were absolutely equal, okay? So introverted and extroverted were absolutely equal. And because I do have my moments where I do want to withdraw and I kind of want to just okay, I don't want to talk to anybody today. I mean, I have my days like that. But I'm also, given the kind of work that I'm doing, and I'm, doing this every day, I do teaching, I've become an extrovert because of my experience over the years. But even so, being an extrovert, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to be surrounded by people all the time. And now this other card that we had pulled about stillness, okay? And stillness is actually, it's interesting because to me, that is a reflection of what true aloneness really is. Because it's almost like you're at a center point, okay? And this is something that can be gained through meditation. It can just be gained through just taking time to integrate and absorb the experiences that you have. A lot of times if we have experiences and say, well, I have too many things going on in my life, I'm too busy and I have to just kind of, rush past it. Or we have a crisis and it's like, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to do triage, but now it's like, okay, or I have to worry about somebody else, or I have to worry about my family, or I have to worry about this person and that person. So we never really have time to sit with the experience for ourselves. Some people don't like to. There's the whole thing about when somebody passes away. How long do you stay by yourself after somebody dies, right? This was something my sister and I were talking about this the other day because we were talking about the difference between my parents, my mom and my dad. Because my dad and mom had very, very different personalities. And when my brother died, and he was only, 22, they both responded in very, very different ways. My father, he wanted to go back to work right away. He didn't want any bereavement time. And when he was home, he was like, I remember he had his little TV room and he would be playing his music. He'd be listening to his 50s music and stuff because my dad was born in the 1930s. So a lot of his happiest memories are from the late 40s, early 50s. That was his thing. And my mother, on the other hand, she didn't really stay out of work that long. She took the bereavement period, but she also went back to work I think she went back after 3 or 4 days. But she was very annoyed with my father. She is like, that is so disrespectful what he is doing. I'm like, well, and we're both just kind of like, no, you're both responding to the void in different ways. And you're both trying to fill it in different ways. Some people, they're just devastated. They need time to themselves. They need that space. Other people don't want to sit in that void because it's too scary. So they want to immediately get back in and, do the normal thing, right? And neither response is incorrect. It's just a matter of who you are and how you process grief. It's not always the same thing. But even when we're not talking about physical death, a lot of times when we have certain things that happen to us or certain things that touch us very, very deeply and profoundly, whether it be in a awestruck kind of a way or whether it's in a disturbing kind of a way, whatever it is, we want to have time to, let that, whatever's bouncing off of us reverberate to some degree and have us figure, but ultimately it's kind of about keeping your vibration steady as that goes on. The idea of stillness is the idea that you're almost in the center of a wheel, so to speak. And the wheel kind of goes around and around and around, and it's very, and as it does so, it's really, it's like that's all the chaos that is around you. But when you have stillness, you're just kind of in the middle, and it's just there. You know what I mean? And that's the experience that I talk about, like, as the samadhi experience. It's like you're in the middle and you're just completely still. And you're actually very at peace inside of yourself, in spite of the fact that all these things going on around you, some of them may be good, some of them may be terrible. It's near the crows out there. It's not something that is, everything just kind of is what it is. And that center point, that's the point at which you really kind of connect with, I don't know, what you want to call the self. Probably, again, I may be thinking about it in Hindu terms, kind of like the idea of the Atman or the Paramatman, connecting to the Paramatman, or the idea that you have this, sometimes they call it Atman Shakti. It's like you are just in this space where you are just you understand who you are. And when you have that, when you've achieved that point of stillness where you're like, okay, I'm still with who I am. And so whatever comes in from you, the environment, you radiate that stillness out. I'd already talked about the experience, which I'm not going to talk about again, when I had my very first samadhi experience after receiving my mantra, about 6 weeks after receiving my mantra. It was around New Year's Eve. But I remember, I think I had mentioned that I was at work, and I was a union rep, and everybody was all ticked off because, the courthouse got to go home and we didn't, and why aren't you doing more about it? Like I was in charge of anything. But, I'd already filed the appropriate complaints, and if administration doesn't do anything, then there's nothing I can do. By the time it gets to the union president and stuff, there's nothing I can do. But I remember everybody was just so angry, and after I had that experience on my lunch break, I came back to work, which felt very, very strange. Because again, you just don't have words exactly. It's kind of weird. And I remember that when I would look at people, like the people who were really angry, their faces just changed. And it was like, their faces like softened, and they actually started to smile. And it wasn't that I was walking around with some stupid look on my face, but it was just like, for some reason, you radiate something that other people pick up on. And so it's just, yeah. So if you have a day when you're more agitated, like people may pick up on it, and you may have a more agitating day because, people pick up on that, and instead of recognizing that, this is something you're going through, they think, oh, well, that person's, being a jerk to me for no reason. Like, you know what I mean? Like people don't necessarily always, it's not always evident, especially because we always kind of put on a facade, but what's going on, inside is something that people can still perceive to some degree. So if you have a day when you've had a very agitating day and you go places, it may just feel like it just gets more and more and more agitating because, you're like, everybody's kind of like bouncing off each other like a ping pong ball or, in a clothes dryer. It's just like everybody's energy is kind of doing that. So yeah, it's that's why there's oftentimes this push towards stillness and this kind of idea of, because that feeling is almost like you are alone in a space where there's a whole lot of stuff going on around you. Probably should start to do our reading for today. And it's hard to describe, but it's almost like you're in a very quiet space. And it's almost like there's doors around you, and you can hear that outside those doors there's a lot of noise and people and stuff, but you're kind of quiet where you are. Now, that's not a state that's really very easy to stay in. But once you've experienced that, I don't know, it changes something. It kind of allows that light to come forward. So when you walk into a space, no matter what you say to somebody or not, people can kind of feel it off of you. And I know that. Like you just feel there's a difference because everything really is connected, because nobody really is alone. Other people around you are going to perceive that. And there's a certain peace in that. I don't even want to say that there's a confidence in that. I guess there is, but it's more like there's just a peace that everything is, and even the things that are not the way we want them to be are what they are. And we don't get knocked off. We don't get dragged around by the wheel, Okay, so let's look at our reading for today. Our first card is awareness. Okay, so this is the Chariot energy. And as you see, yeah, recognizing the real, just what I'm talking about, recognizing the person within, without, this kind of, this shadow. And as you see, the shadow looks like it's kind of doing this, like it doesn't, not really necessarily wanting to see the light of something, not necessarily wanting to confront something, maybe feeling under attack, but then the person inside, that gets burned away, and the person inside kind of sees, the real self that's kind of within there. And the inner feeling of which we're unaware, we have the playfulness card. This is the Knight of Wands energy. So, yeah, I think that's something to be said too. I think when we have feelings of vulnerability, and when I say vulnerability, I mean it in the sense of feeling like insecure and under attack in that way. I think of vulnerability as a strength actually, but this is, if we feel under attack a lot of times, there could be like this intensity of energy that we have here. And actually, sorry, this is Page of Wands energy. That makes more sense. And when we're in a space that is where we feel at peace with where we are, it's more of a playful energy. It's more of a sense of, you can look at the world like with the eyes of wonder rather than the eyes of fear. It's like, okay, what can my imagination do? How can I play? We talked a couple of days ago about using play and using imagination to build things in the world, to be able to, or to envision creative solutions to problems instead of just saying, to kind of the way we catastrophize and say, oh, it's going to be the same crap over and over again, and I'm never going to get out of it. It's like, it's the way in which you can, it allows you to have that space to have these creative solutions. Now, the external feeling of which we're aware, this is the card I talked about the other day that had popped into my head, the celebration card, the Three of Cups. Now, if you look at the Three of Cups, these are three women who are like dancing in the rain, like the water is pouring down. And I think those two kind of go together because it's almost like the water is pouring in, and we can think of that as drowning, or it's like, let's go out and play in the rain. You know what I mean? There's kind of this element of celebrating life and celebrating the wonder of life, which is something you can only do when you've had that moment of inner reflection, inner stillness, that sense of being kind of alone in that space, but you're not really alone. It's like you're in your ability to kind of stand in that pillar of who you are. You kind of become that light for people. Now, our next card is guidance. Okay, Three of Pentacles. So this does suggest that, and again, I feel like this is a change that a lot of people have gone through recently. We've talked about this all week. And I think that I think everybody is coming into awareness. As I mentioned yesterday, I think there's certain karmas that people have, long-standing ancestral stuff that's dying and going away. Okay, it's just, it's going out of, it's stuff that has plagued us perhaps our entire life is finally, either we're able to resolve it or we're able to find the last puzzle piece that tells us how to resolve it. Okay, it's like that eureka moment where you go, oh, that's the thing that's been missing the whole time. That's what I'm having an intuition about. This is why I keep going into this situation and this happens. This is why, I've been wanting to do this, but I've had a wall put up against me doing it, all this kind of stuff. And it says, yeah, we are being guided to the right place. And Three of Pentacles too, by the way, that's a card of collaborating with others too. It's a card of not only guidance from perhaps spirit guides, but it can be your own internal guidance, which is really what this card means. And it can also even just be the way that guidance might be reflected back at you from others. Okay? So again, there's that reminder there that you're guided, that you're not going this, you're not winging it totally blind, even though it feels that way a lot sometimes with certain things. And yeah, here's our conditioning card again. This is our devil card. But it's the fact that I feel like I'm a broken record, but it's you're a lion, not a sheep. Okay? Allowing the lion to come through. And the lion doesn't come through by attacking people in this case. It's more of a having the courage to be who you are. Okay? There's this idea of having courage, and you arrive at it by having that awareness of the amount of possibility that there is, and being able to play with it and being able to celebrate with it instead of seeing everything from a very anxious point of view. Where the rain is like, oh no, I'm probably going to have, water in my basement and and, everything's going to be, it's going to be, driving's going to be hard, and this is going to be hard, and that's going to be hard, and like you can get into a very negative mindset about these things, or you can say like, oh cool, this is going on, I'm gonna go play in it, and if you use the rain kind of figuratively, it's like the idea that when and when it rains it pours, but then go out and play in the rain, if I may mix up some metaphors here. So that's interesting. It's kind of this idea of, like you're supported in getting out of your conditioning here and recognizing that aloneness, especially if you're going through a change right now and maybe you feel it's something that's not understood by others. I think that can be a thing too. Like when you have that moment and if you feel like the people around you are just kind of like, okay, like they don't really get it. I just feel like it's saying, it's okay because you're a light unto yourself and, you're not alone and you will get the information you need. Okay, I pulled another card. Clary Sage is our essential oil card. And the key word is insight. The trigger statement is there's no hope. The true statement is there's a higher purpose, or at least there's a bigger picture. Connect with your higher self and allow to be guided to your higher purpose. I'm not sure if that really is good English, but anyway. As the veil of illusion falls away, you will find your answer. I like playing in the rain, or it's a change I don't understand. And actually to the point of not necessarily understanding a change, that's actually okay. That was another message that actually came up this week, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's the idea that sometimes, especially as we're learning, because the other theme that we seem to be going through here is learning to see without the eyes. And so I feel like we understand something without evaluating it. Like, we don't necessarily know the nuts and bolts and the hows and the whys and all that, but we just know it. A lot of time the knowing that comes out of that, especially in your case, because I know if you're starting with, and maybe, I'm not sure saying that you're necessarily new to meditation, but I know that, there's certain aspects of it that are new for you. You start to find after a while that you just kind of feel the certain things a certain way. But if somebody said to you, well, explain this to me, dissect it for me, you probably wouldn't be able to. You might not even know. It kind of gets back to the topic that I had initially. I get this message this morning and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I don't know what it means, but I've been just told to say it, and I'm just going to trust that it has a meaning, and we're just going to put it out there, and it'll do what it's supposed to do. But I don't need to worry about the outcome of it or what it's going to do. We just have to know that because a lot of times when we're still trying to see with the eyes, we think that we may evaluate things that have happened to us on the basis of what information is incoming right now. Like, okay, I'm looking around me and this is this way, or this hasn't changed, or this is this and this is that. So then we might get ourselves mentally confused about the change. And a lot of times it's just like, we got to wait for the change to unfold. And eventually, like if you have a moment of recognizing it, then there'll be that moment of validation somewhere as to what it was you were feeling. And I think also the more that those kind of moments occur, and the more that we allow ourselves to trust that inner voice rather than relying so much on what, just what's right in front of me, as if that's not ever going to flow or change. I mean, because a lot of times that's the way we think about it. I don't see the way forward. Well, but now you trust that you're going to be shown the way forward, and that when you are, like when you're that light unto yourself, then you see how you may attract other people, and you also may see. You start to get the sense of even as you are kind of alone and solid in yourself, that you're not really alone. Nobody's ever really alone. And you get the sense of the connectedness of things. And I think that that might be kind of what it is, that sense of connection that you have. Like when I had that experience, it was like, it kind of changed the way I looked at everything, because the bottom line is just, I am connected to everything. It's not like I'm just, been left in a corner here to rot somewhere. I mean, there's always a connectedness there. And if we kind of tune into our own energy there, then it's almost like that's how we have synchronicities. That's how we find that the stuff that we need and the information we need comes to us. But it doesn't always come. We always think we have to be very active and we have to reason it out and we have to have a plan, and you don't. I mean, sometimes you just need to sit with it and say, okay, if you don't, if focusing your mental energy on it isn't bringing you an answer, then just leave it, leave it, and it'll come back in the form that it's supposed to. It pretty much always does. So anyway, I'm hoping that makes sense. I'm talking about that a little abstractly, but in any case, we're a 7:45, so I'm going to end this right for now. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Oh, you read my mind. I was thinking of serendipity. Yeah, and serendipity, exactly. Serendripa, I guess that's the word that comes from. Yeah, it's the idea that you just, happy accidents, right? You walk into things, and then you go, oh, there's that thing. That answers that thing. So, serendipity, or it just takes you in a new direction, because you allowed yourself to be open to not say, well, it's got to be this or got to be this. Keep open to it. So, so all of you have a really great rest of your Wednesday. I guess it is Wednesday already. And I am doing the intuitive development class this weekend. I'm starting on Sunday. Like I said, I'm going to do them as people register for them, and we're going to try to just do topics each week. I'm going to try to not make it like one week is reliant on the previous week, because I want to give people a chance who just want to pop in and out of the class to just be able to walk in and, okay, we're going to be talking about this topic today, and this is what we're going to work on today. So people want to register. That's happening this weekend. If any of you are watching who are in the New Jersey, Milford area and have taken Reiki 1 and want to take Reiki 2 with me this weekend, I'm going to be teaching that on Saturday at Riverside Wellness and Enchantments. And right now I've only got one repeat student who's come in, but, and it might just have to see if the other repeat students are actually interested in doing it right now. But anyway, that's it. That's what's upcoming. And like I said, I'm always, always open for Rahani and for other things. So definitely check to see what my schedule is on transitionlifecoaching.net. All of you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you back tomorrow morning. Take care.